Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So, can you all hear me okay? Is there any background noise or anything? Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Deja, and it's a little hard to hear me. Okay, that's good to know. I'm going to switch headphones then. My voice is staticky. Okay, then I'll switch to these. Is that better? Okay, much better. Thank you. Okay, so now that that's all settled, we're going to go ahead with today's very first workshop. So I'm Deja, for those of you who don't remember. I'm one of the advisors for the North Group. And today we're going to be talking about TESOL overview. My camera is off. Oh, that's because I'm speaking through the Sonia account, the master account, if that's so weird. Okay, maybe that's better. Okay, so we're going to start off really quickly by introducing ourselves. So I'll go first. My name is Deja. I was born and raised in Maine. I have my BA in East Asian Studies, a master's in TESOL, and I am a 2-year alumni of the ETA program, 1 year in Kinmen and 1 year in Taipei. And I also really like hiking, badminton, and 7-Eleven coffee. So, Sia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sia Sladen, and I was born in Taiwan, Kaohsiung. And in the past 10 years, I've been living around the world, mainly in China, Qingdao, in the US for 6-ish years. And then the last 4 years, I was in Singapore. I am a certified bilingual elementary teacher in New York State and taught elementary bilingual classes in New York and Singapore. David?
Hi, everybody. I'm David. I am from Spokane, Washington, but I've been living in Taiwan on and off for the last several years. I have degrees in elementary education, teaching English as a second language and language literacy and technology, and I've taught in the U.S., China, Taiwan, Estonia, at elementary, junior high, and university levels.
Okay, cool. So we're going to jump right in with an icebreaker because we want to get to know you guys as well. So can we start with everyone just saying where you're from in the chat box on Google Meets? So open up your chat box and let us know where you're from. Chicago, Maryland, New York. Okay. Is anyone else from Maine? That's kind of a long shot. Okay, cool, cool. There's definitely a lot of people from all over. I see quite a few in New York. Okay, we also have some poll questions for you guys. So our first question is, have you ever been to Taiwan before? And our second question is, do you have any teaching related experience? And our third question is, do you speak Mandarin? So we're kind of a little bit curious about maybe how much Taiwan experience you guys have. Oh, and you can find these in the poll. So if you open up on Google Meets, there's 3 poll questions, and you should be able to just answer the multiple choice. Cool, cool. It looks like a majority of you have not been to Taiwan before. So that'll be very exciting. And some of you have. A lot of you have teaching related experience. That's really great. I think you'll have a lot of different things to compare and contrast over your year. And we have a few Chinese speakers and a majority who don't speak. Cool, cool. Okay, we also have, here, let me see. Oh, now my camera's back. Thank you, David. So we also have a very short warm-up game for you guys. We want to play kind of like Never Have I Ever. Sorry, I'm echoing a little bit. But if everyone could turn your camera on and put 5 fingers up, we're going to do Put a Finger Down, Taiwan edition. So 5 fingers up. The very first question is, put a finger down if you watched Taiwan in the Olympics. We're going to see how many people are familiar with Taiwan. Okay, so I see quite a few people. The second question is, put a finger down if you tried bubble tea. Oh, not many.
Can you say that again?
Repeat that.
The question again?
Put a finger down if you've tried bubble tea. Okay, that's more. Put a finger down if you can name the tallest building in Taiwan. Okay, can anyone tell me what it is?
Just shout it out.
Now I'm afraid I'm wrong. Is it Taipei 101? Oh, yes. Okay.
It is. It is Taipei 101. For all of those who are in Taipei, you'll see that quite often. Okay, the next question is, put a finger down if you have a friend who is from Taiwan. Okay, maybe a little bit less. The next question is, put a finger down if you've tried stinky tofu before. How many people want to try stinky tofu? No? I don't blame you. Okay, the next question for those who are still going, put a finger down if you have ridden on a scooter. And I mean like moped, Vespa kind of scooter that you're going to see all over the streets. Okay? Next one is, put a finger down if you can name a dialect that they speak here in Taiwan, besides Mandarin Chinese. Can anyone tell me?
I think one of them is Hakka.
Yes, it is. Correct. Hakka is one of the local dialects spoken, and also Taiwanese, and several others. And the very last question I have for you, which is very important if you're going to spend any time at KTV or karaoke while you're here, put a finger down if you have a favorite Taiwanese pop star. Does anyone know any Taiwanese pop stars? No? Well, I promise that you'll learn about quite a few while you're here. One of the most famous ones is probably Jay Cho. You might have heard of before. Also Eric Cho. Lots of different really great singers. Okay, so that's all for the icebreaker. If you were able to put all 5 fingers down, can you raise your hand? And by raise your hand, I mean with the little function on Google Meets. Okay. Quite a few people. Oh, most all of them are in. Okay, so if you were not able to put all 5 fingers down, then I really hope that over the next first couple of months that you're in Taiwan, you'll be able to have all of these different experiences. And if we do this game again at mid-year, hopefully everyone will be able to put all 5 fingers down. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen one more time. Okay. And I'm just gonna let you guys know about the schedule for today. So for today's workshop, for the very first hour, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have 3 mini lectures. So David's gonna start us off, and he's gonna talk about what is TESOL. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit about what does TEFL look like in Taiwan. And then Sia's gonna take us home and give us a look at English in Taiwan. And then after that, we'll have a 10-minute break. And when we come back for the second hour, we'll have a short review game, followed by station small group discussions. And during our small group discussions, we'll talk about questions you have about teaching in Taiwan, questions you have about living in Taiwan, and also talking about some of your teaching experiences that I know a lot of you said you have. Have a wrap, and that'll be all for today's workshop. So I'm gonna ask you one more question, is if you could please hold any questions you have during these 3 little mini lectures and just jot them down. And when we have the discussions in the second hour, then you can ask them then in a smaller group setting. Okay, that being said, David, why don't you take it away?
All right, so good evening, everybody, or morning, or whenever your time is. So I'm going to start off our first of 3 mini lectures. We're going kind of big to small, general to specific regarding TESOL and what that means for you. So starting off, I mean, this workshop is called TESOL Overview. Does anybody know what TESOL stands for? We might use it often, but it's a pretty common phrase. If anybody knows, if you would put it in the chat. What does TESOL stand for? All right, thank you, Anthony. So teaching English to speakers of other languages. This is kind of, actually, I guess I have another slide. This is kind of an umbrella term for many different circumstances in which a teacher of English would be working with learners of English. And so kind of a big focus of my section today is just kind of going through some of the acronyms so that you'll be familiar with them, since they'll come up often throughout the year, just in regards to your context. So TESOL in general, teaching English to speakers of other languages. So that implies it's about the teaching, and that's kind of our focus as we are either native or fluent speakers of English, and we'll be teaching that language to our Taiwanese students. Some other acronyms. English is a native language. And so this refers to, this isn't something that you hear as much, ENL, but being considered a native speaker or a fluent speaker is something that you will encounter a lot in your life in Taiwan. It refers to someone who speaks English as the language of their community or of their country. It implies intense exposure to the language within their home, their community, their country, and usually communicative competence before school. So in most cases, or in a lot of cases, someone who is born, for example, in the US is likely to be able to communicate in English before they enter the schooling system, which we'll talk about in comparison to, for example, English in Taiwan here. So an example, Jimmy's from the United States. He speaks English at home with his family and friends. He also uses English at school and in his community. So this is English as a native language, ENL. Another acronym. Also, if you, again, to reiterate, our second session is going to be sort of a discussion Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please write them down, on your computer or in a notepad, and we'll work on addressing questions in the second half. Another acronym, ESL, you may be familiar with. It comes up a lot in the US. ESL is English as a second language, although we are moving toward different acronyms to better sort of encompass this group of learners. And this is an English learner who lives within a community where English is the dominant language, but that may not be the language that they speak in their home. They have usually wide access and exposure to English, again, outside of the home, likely in school, and English may be the main language used in school. So for example, Mona from Japan moved to England when she was 8. She speaks Japanese with her family and Japanese friends. However, she learns English at school and uses English to communicate with members of her community. So this is someone from a non-English speaking background who is currently living and studying in an English speaking background. Next is EFL. This is English as a foreign language. This means that English is being learned as neither the language of the country, the home, or the community. Often there is limited exposure, access. We have the internet now, which is a big game changer for sure, and TV and stuff. But English is more likely to be learned as a school subject rather than a tool for communication, because usually the home language and the community language is different, and English is being used for grades in school. For example, Mohammed from Libya speaks Arabic with his family and friends, uses mostly Arabic at school, with the exception of 3 English classes per week in which he learns English. He also uses Arabic with members of his community. This is English as a foreign language. Next, English as a lingua franca. This is when English is one of multiple official or de facto official languages of a country alongside others. And English is used for communication between members of different native languages or home languages. So for example, Yang from Malaysia speaks Chinese with her family and Chinese Malay friends. She uses Chinese, Malay, and English at school, but she uses English to communicate with members of her community who do not speak Chinese. And so this is when you have a multilingual country and you use English as a language between groups. You have your in-group language, and then English is used to connect with members of other groups. In Taiwan specifically, you can think of Mandarin as being the lingua franca between groups, for example, who speak Taiwanese at home or Hakka at home or an indigenous language. English language learner is also a blanket term. This is anybody who's learning English as an additional language. It implies that they have a home language that's different than English. This can apply to ESL or EFL students. For example, Golden, the name of a student that I had last year, is from Taiwan. He speaks Taiwanese with his family. He speaks Mandarin at school, except for 3 classes per week in which he speaks English. He is an ELL, an English language learner, learning in an EFL, English as a foreign language context. So of all those groups, we talked about ENL, ESL, EFL, ELF. Which of these do you think best represents the Taiwanese English learning context? Do you think you'll be working with ESL students, EFL students, or ELF students? Right, so thank you for those who responded in the chat. EFL is the correct answer. You'll be working with students learning English as a foreign language, meaning that it's not a language, that English is not a language that is needed for daily communication in Taiwan. Taiwan has many languages. Taiwan is already a multilingual island. And so English is used for communication with people from outside of Taiwan who don't speak Mandarin or a Chinese dialect. And that's important to keep in mind because although I would say it's easy enough to get by in Taiwan without speaking any Chinese, it's not considered an English-speaking country. And so that affects, for example, the ability, the language abilities of the students that you'll be working with. They'll be likely low English proficiency and potentially low motivation, as especially for kids. It's not necessarily something that they need currently, though it's likely that it'll be an important part of their lives or opportunities in the future. And the last thing, or the last couple things, I guess, ETA, hopefully you know this acronym, English Teaching Assistant. This is you all, and you will be coming to Taiwan to assist in elementary or junior high schools around Taiwan. And your goal will be to help support language use, communicative competence and confidence, and cross-cultural awareness. A little example, Audrey is from the United States. I guess I messed up. I changed different pronouns. She is living and participating in an educational and cultural exchange in New Taipei City. She assists in 2 elementary schools where she helps her students build confidence and in communicating in English and across cultures. So those are kind of the things that you'll be focusing on, is helping your students feel confident in their language abilities and uses, because one thing about sort of the language learning context here, students often have a lot more in their heads than actually comes out of their mouths. So it can sometimes feel like they know less than they actually do. And part of what we try to do is help them feel more comfortable to try to make an effort to communicate, despite that there might be some hurdles or bumps, helping them feel comfortable and confident in trying, exploring language use, and also to gain experience working with people from other cultures, from other countries, learning more about the world through you. And then the last one is TEFL advisor, and this is us. We 3 teachers of English as a foreign language advisors. And what we do is we give ETA and LET workshops. We advise ETAs on teaching and professional matters. As far as I know, this hasn't been assigned yet, but we will each be given a group of advisees to work with, though you are welcome to work with and communicate with all of us. We will be specifically assigned a set of advisees. We will observe your co-teaching with your local English teacher once a semester, and we will read and respond to reports, reflections about your teaching and living experiences in Taiwan. And so for the example, David, Deja, and Sia are the North Group ETA advisors. Collectively, we help you ETAs and your local teaching counterparts effectively navigate the EFL and CLIL landscape, and we'll talk more about what CLIL is later, in order to best support students' opportunities for growth in English competence, confidence, and cross-cultural awareness, and to help you get the most out of your experience in Taiwan. The last thing that I want to talk about for my section is the idea of world Englishes. One thing that is very important to be aware of is that you, as a fluent speaker of American English, doesn't automatically make you an authority on the English language, and that as English has become a globalized language, more and more people around the world speak it, and the need for speaking it specifically the way a certain region does is becoming less and less necessary. And so I don't know how to pronounce his name, Cat True, created these circles of world Englishes. You have the inner circle, for example, the USA and the UK, outer circle, India, Nigeria, expanding circle, China, Russia, Brazil. The inner circle represents the sort of mother tongue countries. And so US, UK, places where it's more likely to be monolingual speakers. And they may be seen as kind of the authorities, as this is your first and main language. Outer circle is going to be sort of countries that may have a colonial history with England or the US, and speak English as one of an official language or the language of school, in addition to other local languages, for example, in India or Nigeria, Singapore, Malaysia. And then expanding circle includes the rest of the world where English is used as the primary foreign language. So it may not be an official language used for communication within the country, but people are learning English in order to engage with people from outside of their country. So of these circles, inner circle, outer circle, expanding circle, which one does Taiwan fit in? Please write in the chat. So we will, great, thank you for your responses. It's currently in the expanding circle, where it's not necessarily needed for most people in their daily lives. It's learned as a foreign language. But as we'll talk about in the next section, there is a goal or a push to try and move toward being part of the outer circle from the current expanding circle. And next, why TESOL? English is the dominant international language of the 21st century. It is spoken at a useful level, meaning general communicative competence, by some 1.75 billion people, a quarter of the world's population. So 1 in 4 people speak English to a usable level as the language of communication, science, information technology, business, entertainment, and diplomacy. It has increasingly become the operating system for global conversation. So as you can see in the 3 circles again in the bottom, the inner circle with an estimated around 375 million speakers of English as the likely mother tongue. But then if you notice in the outer circle, you have an even larger number than the inner circle. And then outside of that, the expanding circle is even larger. So you can see the comparison of people learning English is already greater than the people who speak English as their native language. And I didn't find this statistic, but I think I heard that there are more, for example, people in China learning English than there are native speakers of English in the world. So it's definitely a language that people around the world are learning, so that they can join the global, the international conversation. And my last slide for my section, things that you'll be teaching, we'll get down into the nuts and bolts about how to teach in future sessions. But things that you'll be focused on as an ETA in Taiwan are things like cross-cultural communication, communicating between cultures and helping kids recognize that people come from different places and they might do things differently, they might speak differently, they might act differently, and how we can kind of navigate the space when you're working with people who come from places different than yours that might have different social norms or expectations. Communication skills in general, of course, that will be with a focus on English language, cultural awareness, in the case of you being an expert on the community that you come from and sharing that with your students and learning about the communities that they are from by living in those communities. And literacy skills, you'll be helping students, for example, with learning the alphabet and learning to read at various levels, with focuses on things like listening, reading, speaking, and writing, as well as developing confidence and cultural awareness. So that is the end of my section, and I will hand it to the next section, which is about Taiwan specifically.
Let me figure out how to do this. I'm getting an error notification in Chinese. That being said, no one near me who's better to read Chinese who could help me figure this problem out. David, do you want to just share it and I'll just ask you to go next for now, maybe?
Can do.
Thank you, David, because I cannot read this error message in Chinese. Unfortunately, my Chinese literacy is not as good as my speaking. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to talk a little bit about what does TESOL look like in Taiwan. Thank you, David, for giving a really great overview of what TESOL is and for giving us an introduction to kind of the international context with learning English. But what exactly does that look like in Taiwan specifically? So next. So talking about a Taiwanese context, as David mentioned, Taiwan is an TESOL context, so English here is learned as a foreign language. And there's kind of an interesting kind of history timeline about how English has slowly entered the main curriculum, and I kind of want to go over a few key dates or periods over the past couple decades with you guys, just to give you an idea of what English learning looks like in schools. So the first thing to note is that English came into, if you clicked, English came into the junior high schools in Taiwan sometime around the 1970s. So people who are our parents' age, maybe in their 50s or so, might have started having English classes from junior high school. So actually, English has been a part of the curriculum for quite a long time. However, it didn't start entering elementary school until about 1997 and then 1998. In these two periods, this was like a trial run where the government said, okay, we want to start trying and see if we can teach English from elementary school, first in 5th and 6th grade, and then later moved earlier to 3rd grade. And after they looked at this for a couple years in 2005, they said, okay, this is a good time to start. And English became an official part of the curriculum and a state curriculum from the 3rd grade. So a lot of the people that you're going to meet and people that you're going to see maybe who are roughly your age, maybe in their 20s, they probably all started learning English from grade 3. So most people that you're going to be interacting with have had English as part of their standard curriculum for many, many years now. However, that being said, you might notice that a lot of them tend to be really good at reading or listening to English, but not as good at speaking or writing. So David kind of briefly had a little picture on his last slide about something called receptive language versus expressive. Reading and listening, things that are input that you're getting are receptive language, things that you're taking in. And a lot of Taiwanese students in English classes until now really focus on these skills because those are the skills that are most easy to test on standardized tests. as opposed to expressive language like speaking and writing, things where students are supposed to give some kind of output. Because as David mentioned, Taiwan is an EFL context. So there's not many opportunities outside of the English classroom to actually practice and utilize those kind of expressive skills, like speaking to someone or maybe having to write something in English. So as a result, kind of until now, for all of these past decades where English has been in the main curriculum, we've really seen most of its focus on skills like reading and listening as opposed to speaking and writing. However, in 2018, there was a kind of life-changing policy. Maybe that's a little bit too big of a word, but there was a very revolutionary policy that was put into place by the government to become a bilingual nation by 2030. So as of right now, and for the past few years, Taiwan has had this goal of saying, we are going to become bilingual by the year 2030. And it's almost 2022. So there's not a lot of years left before this goal is supposed to be accomplished, which is why I see a slightly possible goal. But that being said, there's a lot of things that they're still trying their best to do in order to reach this goal, whether or not it's actually feasible. And I want to tell you guys kind of the different things that have been happening in the past few years in relation to this goal that you might encounter in your classrooms. So next. Okay, so just to kind of recap real quick, with this new bilingual by 2030 goal, if you click, we're seeing Taiwan trying to move from the expanding circle into the outer circle. And some of you guys noted that in David's last presentation. This goal is kind of, that's exactly what it's trying to do. They're trying to move to a place where English can be used as a form of communication, both with inside the country, but more specifically for that global context, helping Taiwan enter the global community and the global field, and basically help their students to be able to do that once they enter the workforce. However, that being said, I do want to mention one more thing. Next. Is that it is important that we kind of keep this multilingualism mindset. As David already mentioned, Taiwan is already a multilingual country. Learners here, they speak Chinese, some Taiwanese, some speak Hakka and different dialects in their own communities. And it's important for us to keep in mind, click, that the goal, this bilingual goal of bilingual by 2030 is not to replace Chinese or any of the local languages or dialects, but it's rather to add Taiwanese to people's language repertoire and to prepare them in Taiwan to better in the global community. So click. So like I just said, the languages that already exist here, we're not looking to get rid of any of them. And that's kind of a big misconception for a lot of people, even Taiwanese people in Taiwan who don't fully understand this bilingual by 2030 goal, is some of them might think or have some backlash thinking, well, we don't want to get rid of Taiwanese or Hakka and replace it with English. But actually at the core of this goal, it's not to replace any of these local dialects. Instead, it's just to add to them and include English into that language repertoire that the people can have in order to engage in the global community. Click, click, 2 clicks. So I want to talk a little bit about what exactly the government is doing to reach this goal with this kind of multilingualism in mindset. So next, I kind of highlighted 3 key points that the government's kind of doing. They're doing a lot of different things. A lot's going on. It's a very chaotic few couple of years with all of these different new initiatives. But one of them is expanding English language programs in Taiwan, like the Fulbright program. You might know that there's many more ETAs this year than there were in past years. Each year it gets more and more. We get more regions. And that's because the government's really working hard to expand these types of programs. They're also working hard from a curriculum level to try and put a greater emphasis on expressive language, speaking and writing, in opposed to all of the focus that was on things like reading and listening. And lastly, they're also trying to put some funding and kind of pressure, not pressure, but kind of a push for more bilingual programs in schools. And once you get to Taiwan and you get in your schools, you might hear a lot about these bilingual programs. So I want to explain a little bit about what these bilingual programs look like. So what do they look like? Okay, so just to kind of give you a very vague definition, when I say bilingual program, I'm talking about a specific curriculum or course that was designed and probably proposed by an individual school to implement some kind of content and language integrated learning program. And what exactly does that mean? Well, bilingual programs in general, there's a lot of different, if you click, there's a lot of different ways you can teach bilingual education. There's a lot of different forms of it. It can be English mediated. There can be a lot of different variations. But one of the most popular forms of bilingual education that Taiwan has really taken a liking to is something called CLIL, which is Content and Language Integrated Learning. And CLIL is fairly popular in multiple places around the world because it's fairly straightforward. Content plus language in one class. It's easy, right? Well, not exactly. We're still kind of learning how to do it. But in general, one of the great things about CLIL is that all challenges aside, the most important point is that you can boost English exposure outside of the English classroom, which is key. By integrating CLIL classes like CLIL Science, CLIL Math, CLIL Art, CLIL PE, you're able to increase the students' overall exposure to English inside the school, which is really important. But how exactly are we going to get schools to try out these bilingual programs and CLIL classes? Well, that is in part by incentives. So what's kind of happening, if you click twice, is that the central government in Taiwan has all of this money for bilingual education, bilingual by 2030 goal, and county governments can choose to apply to the central government to get access to these funds with the promise that they'll distribute the money to individual schools in their county who are open to establishing a bilingual program. So you'll find that a lot of different schools around Taiwan who have kind of bought into this, this idea and they're excited about trying it, they're all kind of getting this funding from this big bilingual by 2030 goal that originally comes from the central government as part of their initiative to help with that ultimate end-all goal. However, that being said, we have a bunch of schools around Taiwan who have the funds to start these bilingual programs, but we're actually finding that no one really knows exactly what CLIL is, and everyone has a different idea to teach it. Because, like I said before, it's simple, right? Just content and language. Teach them science, teach them English, all in one class. But actually, everyone has a different idea to how to do it. And that results in CLIL classes everywhere looking very different in every school that's trying to do it. And we get this kind of lack of uniformity in content and successfulness. However, all that being said, ultimately, CLIL is still new, and we're still learning how to do it together. And CLIL is just kind of one part of the puzzle that you might see once you enter Taiwanese schools. Some of you may teach CLIL, some of you may not. But it's just one part of the bigger picture of trying to move towards this bilingual by 2030 goal. So that being said, what does this all mean for you in your school specifically? Well, it kind of means that you might end up teaching a lot of different things. You might teach textbook English classes. You might teach CLIL. You might end up teaching culture classes. You might teach English clubs. That being said, even though you're all from the North region, each of your experiences might end up being very different because your school ultimately gets to decide how they want to utilize you. So that really means that you really might have a very different experience, even from someone else who's also located in the same side as you. However, that being said, our common goal is still the same. And that goal is to connect with our students in schools and to learn and grow together. So no matter what situation you end up in, what you end up teaching, none of them are too different from one another. They're not, one is not harder than the other. CLIL is not necessarily harder or more difficult than textbook English or vice versa. It's just a different context, all kind of leading towards this same goal. Next. So yeah, like I've kind of summarized, it's a lot of information, but right now, Taiwan's English curriculum, there's a lot going on. So there's just 3 important things for you to keep in mind. The first one is to keep a positive mindset and don't get too caught up in comparing between schools. The second one is to remember the value and why we're doing this. And the third one is to rely on your support team when you need it. And that being said, just break them down super quickly, like in a hot second. So in terms of keeping a positive mindset, click. Sorry, David, I appreciate you doing all these animations for me. Like I said, there's a lot of classroom English, more CLIL. You might have no idea what to do, but just try and take a moment to think, okay, I can do my best. I'll make the most of my experience no matter what I end up teaching, whether it's textbook English, CLIL, whatever. It's all fun. And honestly, all of them are a great experience for you and your students. Next. And also remember how it relates to our role in the bigger picture. Click. By being in the classroom as an ETA, you're really able to click bring authentic language and culture to the classrooms. And also, by interacting with the students, you're really able to prepare them to engage in a global community, give them opportunities for real, genuine interaction. And by being involved in CLIL classes, if you are able to help increase their exposure to English outside of the classroom, which is key in this overall goal. And the very last thing I have to say is about relying on your support team. So click, click, click. You can just click 3 times. You're not alone in this. The Bilingual by 2030 goal is still relatively new, and we're all learning together. But as your advisors, we really want to try our best to help you as best as we can. And in order to do that, just keep us up to date on what your specific needs are and your questions are. Let us know during our observations, weekly reports, or monthly reports, what's going on, and we'll try our best to work with you to make sure that you all have a great experience this year. Sorry, that was a lot of information, but on to Sia. Thank you, David. I appreciate your help.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Deja and David, for your introduction and sneak peek into the 2030 goals in Taiwan. And let me share my screen. So, and apologize in advance if I seem not looking into the camera, because I'm using 2 cameras to look at the slides, so I know what I'm going to talk about. So we were just out there. Okay, this. All right, now let me put this home, and then we will proceed to our break from the next and to the next session. So we're going to take a look at the English situation in Taiwan classroom. So here on the screen, you will see the reference, and later you will be able to access it when we share the slides on our classroom. So traditionally, usually this is the textbook that you will see when you had a chance when you go to the classroom. There are different sections, the dialogue, the story, and the key vocabulary sections, and with grammar listed, and usually it's quite information rich, but also sometimes to students in Taiwan, they sometimes also tend to be a little bit information overload. And also they usually come with the fill in the blank practices, and this is what you will see. Now, with this said, there's a lot of things that you can actually work from, and or you can take to piece by piece to develop a good lesson plan to instruct your students. But overall, let's take a look. Analyze usually is the drawback of everything that they're doing, because usually traditional in Taiwan, learning English becoming learning a subject is never becoming a tool or listen the word, a tool to daily communication. So for many students, this part kind of hinder their learning in English. They don't see it as a valuable asset for their daily life. So for them, it doesn't really interest them. And let's see. So what does it mean when it comes to using the target language? Because the English language becoming like a subject learning to that it's just for to get a good grade in school, or to get into the school if they're learning to figure out how to put the right answer in the fill in the blank answers. So for them, is not really useful in the classroom. In the daily life. It lack of the language authenticity for them to use. And also, for example, there are more complicated reasoning behind. For example, like maybe different families have different resources. Some families are able to put their children in the cram school, which you will see in the future. After school, normal school, they tend to go to English school to have some makeup lessons or push them further. So some families are able to afford these resources for their children, while some other students may not be able to have these resources. So that creates the divide of their language ability, English language ability. And for most of all, the language exposure and understanding of diverse cultures in just American English is also lacking, if not there. So for a lot of students in Taiwan, it's hard for them to fall in love with this language. Now, we're trying to do in this, and all of your help, just like Deja and David was mentioning. With your help, we are hoping to help students in Taiwan moving from the expanding circle toward the outer circle. For students for students like in Taiwan, for them to create the authentic environment. So hoping that we can create a kind of environment for students in Singapore, or for example, like in Malaysia, students in Malaysia, they can have. Now, you're in Taiwan school, so we're hoping with you here, with your help, you can bring in the language authenticity in their school life, and also expose students in diverse English language and the culture that you will bring into their life. You might be the first person in their school, first foreigner they see in their school life. Then you are one of the many opportunities that we'll have to use English in an authentic way. So like we were talking about, so one thing that you need to keep in mind is that language is the vehicle to communicate intention. So a lot of times you will find that sometimes your students don't seem to understand what you are communicating. Maybe it's because the pronunciation, maybe it's because the word you're using, but there's no just one to learn or teach. Sometimes with the body language, in the future you will more tests like PPR, total physical response, some strategy to help the student the student to understand what you're trying to say. So be optimistic when you are planning lesson in the future. Try to set realistic goals. Then just make sure you bring in the language consistency and authenticities in their life. Try to use as much English as possible to help them expose them in that language environment. But like I said, the language barriers are there, but don't give up. Sometimes try to enunciate more with body language and use different words to help you to understand what you're trying to say. And be resilient and thoughtful and kind for their learning process, because sometimes, just like David was saying, sometimes they learn a lot and there are a lot of things in their head, but it's hard for them to use the language and it takes some processing time. and all the language learners draw upon their language repertoire in their mother tongue. So sometimes you'll find that they're using different their mother tongues, or like maybe it's in Hakka, maybe it's in Taiwanese to learn English, but that's totally okay. So now, as what we were talking about and a little bit earlier, sorry, I'm a little bit I don't know why I'm nervous. So now we're going to go into please don't leave the meeting because we're going to set up something into the room later. So just stay in the meeting, and you can mute and turn off your camera, come back, and we're going to have a little activity to warm us up and to go into our next session.
And just while you guys are on break, I put 3 questions in the chat box. Feel free to start thinking about them now. When we come back in the afternoon, not in the next hour, we're going to have some small group discussions. So you can start thinking about what teaching experiences you can share, what questions you have about teaching English in Taiwan, and what questions you have about living in Taiwan. So you can start thinking about that now. And like Sia just said, 10-minute break, and then we'll come back.
Okay, welcome back, and thank you, you guys, for your patience. I know for some of you, most of you, are still in the U.S. No matter what time zones you're at. Yeah. Oh, now we're gonna start a review activity with Kahoot. Now, here is what you're going to do. Let me see if I can share the campaign. Okay, so please join Kahoot and then join Kahoot and use the game team. I'll come back in a minute. Right here. Okay, so the game team is right here. So once you join, okay, sorry for the echo. How many people do we have? 41. Okay, still waiting for half of you to join. All right. Any more? Okay, so we're going to start. All right, here we go. Okay, which grade English learners likely to be the least exposure to English language? All right. Okay, most of you got it right. Is the EFL English as well foreign language learner. All right, let's go to the next one. There are more learners of English as an additional language than there are more monolingual native speakers of English. True or false? All of you got it right. Yay! Awesome. Okay, which one is the right here? Okay. All right. Do we have that all? Okay. Yes, the expanding circle. So we're actually still learning, like on a very outside ring, and we're trying to push the students into the outer circle. Okay. Wow, Anthony, good job. Okay, as for 2018, Taiwan has a new goal to becoming a bilingual nation by what time? Yes, 2030. Okay, next one. Taiwan's English classes have focused more on receptive language than expressive language. Taiwanese learners tend to be focusing on more.
Tend to be better at.
Oh, sorry. There's word limited, word limits, so I can only put in that much. Okay, yes. Okay, so they pay attention to more reading and listening. Good. Let's see. Okay, we'll try the next one. Okay, good. Okay, to achieve the 2030 goal, schools are encouraged to start bilingual programs and teach CLIL classes. What does CLIL mean? Yes, CLIL means content and language integrated learning. Thank you. Next one. Okay. What is the most important thing when teaching English, teaching or learning English? Okay. Yes. We all come from different places. We all have our accents. There's also some pronunciation differences. For example, some people pronounce tomato, some people pronounce tomato. So that's also different word pronunciation and word choices. So, but those are not the main thing that we're learning teaching English. Okay, one intention of bringing each day to Taiwanese learners school life to increase their exposure to English. Is true or false? Yes, it's true. Okay. Okay, which one of the following is the reason why Taiwanese students have a hard time developing their English? Okay. Yes, it's not because there's not enough foreigners in Taiwan. Oh, sorry, it's wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I said this wrong. Okay, wait. Which one? It's okay. Yes, it's not this one. Sorry, I got tricked for by my own question. Okay, so next one. All right, your role as an ETA in school is to make sure students speak with proper English accent or pronunciation. True or false? Okay. So like what we talked about before, the accents and pronunciation is also related to where you're from. Sometimes you pronounce it one way, another pronounce it the other way. So that is not the main thing. The main thing is for the English exposure for the students' learning environment. Okay, thank you for your participation in this game. I think my laptop just, oh, hey, let's take a little podium. The winner is, third place is Caesar, second place is Anthony, and the first place is Kai. Yay! So yeah, there's no real prize, but good for you. Give you a round of applause. All right, so now let me bring us back to our slide, which if my laptop decides to cooperate. Let me go back to here. I think it's okay, presenting. So now our next session is station chat, each one of the advisors will have a topic to discuss with you about. Come on, I don't know. So, apologize for the delay. I think it's the Wi-Fi issue. Okay, next one. Okay, so for Deja Station, she will be talking about answering your question, or maybe you have some ideas that you would like to share with your group, the life about in Taiwan. In David's station is the question, or he will be able to answer some of your question about teaching in Taiwan. And in my station, I would like to hear, or everybody would like to hear about your teaching experience, and so maybe your concern of teaching English in Taiwan, and I hope I can also answer some of your questions. So I think Sonia will help us to put us in group, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So are you ready?
yes, thank you.
Okay, ready, go.
Okay, so we're back. This is the end of today's workshop. Sia, if you want to move to the final slide, we have one more thing that we want to ask before you go. And that is something interesting that you learned today. It can be something that one of your peers shared, something that was shared in one of our presentations, something that you thought about, but just give us an idea of something that you learned or reconsidered. Type it in the chat box so that we can get an idea of the things that you're interested in, the things that you're thinking about, the things that you want to know more about. So give us a quick something interesting that you learned today or thought of today, and then we will wrap up. So go ahead and do that now. Once we get a few responses, then we will call it a day for the first session, since I know some of you are about ready for bed. So yeah, bilingual 2030 is a big deal. It's an ambitious goal, and also it was set before anyone had any idea that COVID would change everything. So everything is quite in flux in the moment, but it's a very interesting time to be in Taiwan. There's a lot of ambition toward making changes to help Taiwan join the global community, since traditionally there is the strongest tie, obviously, with mainland China because they share a culture and common language. But by becoming a competent country of English speakers, they can sort of decrease that dependency and, again, engage the rest of the world more easily. Let's see. Not a lot of small group work involved in our schools outside of teaching hours. Great. So a lot of great things. We'll write these things down, keep them in mind for future sessions. And again, we'll be working with you a lot over the next year. And we're very excited for you all to be coming to Taiwan. We look forward to helping you as you transition into your schools and as you get here, quarantine, and then get out there and down to business. So thank you all for sharing. We'll write these things down. We'll see you again tomorrow because we have a session tomorrow at the same time. And tomorrow's session will be covering the topic of lesson planning. So we'll give you a better idea of the things that are covered in Taiwanese schools, what kind of things are in the curriculum, what might you come up against, and so you can start to get your head around the level, the content, the topic, stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and end there right on time, and we will see you again at the same time.